In this quick little session, I have with me Darcy Haroff. Darcy, you are, I don't know your exact title, but you spend your days and your weeks and your months with AgExpert from FCC. And we wanted to take a few minutes today to do a bit of a demonstration or a run through of how AgExpert and crop intelligence, in particular, the next year's potentials kind of planning tools can work hand in hand. So we'll jump right in and just show you what we've been kind of thinking about for the last few days. More than a few days, for the last little while. So most of our audience will be familiar with what I'm showing on my screen here. This is our next year's potential. And so we're showing that you've got about 2 inches of soil water left after 2020. We had a pretty dry season. You guys had less than half of normal precipitation during the growing season. Started out the year with quite a bit of soil moisture after the fall of 2019. On average, we'd receive 4 inches of overwinter precip and about 8.5 inches of in-season precipitation. So I guess, what does that mean for next year? So I don't know where you're sitting at, Darcy, but want to see what might be in the realm of possible for canola?
Yeah, let's use canola. And I think I farm just southeast of Regina in the Odessa Vibank area, so 35 minutes as the crow flies. And I think this is real in our area. It's pretty dry out there this year. So being able to plan right now as we're looking to planning for next crop year, as I'm planning for next crop year, having some more science or yields based on some science and some long historical averages is way better than me guessing what I might be able to grow. So yeah, if you want to, Kendall, I can show you based on that with canola. If you can give me some average yield, I'll show you how we can plug it into our tool and help farmers make some decisions for next year. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's really interesting. These numbers are it's just really nice to have them recalculated every year for the 30-year average and at our fingertips. We should all know them by heart, but most of us don't. Where do you think so I've set your field productivity as medium. That's kind of our system defaults, and would be quite well calibrated to Odessa, Regina kind of area. What do you think we're going to get for winter precip? We have the option to pick 50, 75, 100, or 125% average.
It's a good question. They're saying there's going to be lots of snow this year, so maybe let's leave it at 100% of average and see how it works out.
So when we give the range of in-season precipitation, and depending on whether we get near normal, we've got a fairly average yield goal possible. That 50 bushel target would make a lot of sense. But if we're drier again, we're looking at some lower yields. So I'll maybe stop my share and give you the option to show us what those kinds of numbers would mean, or how you would use that in AgExpert to start to understand a little bit more.
All right, so I'll use the 33 bushel number that you gave. And then are you seeing my screen, Kendall?
I see it.
So if we just focus on those top lines of canola, what I did is, and this info scrubbed a little bit from last year, but I'm basically using a lot of my last year's info planning for the 2021 crop year to try to get as an accurate representation as possible. We were chatting just before this about the price of phos going a little bit crazy in the last few months, and fertilizer going up, nitrogen going up a little bit. And then what I did is I just looked on Viterra what their price is for September next year for canola, and I think works out to about $10.77 a bushel. So given all that, with a yield of 33, there's my my per acre profit. There's still some, given what we have now, knowing that if we get a half of average rainfall and a good winter, it just gives me some confidence maybe that growing canola is still not a bad option for next year, Kendall. Now, I'd be curious if we got 75% or half of the snowfall next year, what that would do to yields, and then, plan that scenario. So if you want to give me that number, maybe out of crop intel.
Yeah, I mean, if we get 25% of average winter precip and, half a normal rainfall, so that would put us half of normal rainfall is what we got this year. But now you're talking about half of normal with certainly not a full soil profile in the spring. If we come in with after our dry fall of 2020 and not so much winter precip, that's going to impact things. And that puts our bottom end at about 28 to 32 bushels.
Even if I use 28 and take a very conservative approach, let's see what that does. I guess I could do just the one field, but I'll do both. You can see your profit shrink up quite a bit on that 5 bushel yield difference. And my input costs here do include one fungicide application, but if I'm planning for next year, I'm probably not looking at 2 fungicide applications if it's going to be a dry year. Or not that you'd have to in a dry year, but it's things like that that I think right now a lot of farmers out there are doing things like this right now, and they're scenario planning and just having the confidence in the crop intelligence tool and having the confidence to know what your numbers are, at least from as fine as you can get your margin on your farm. I think is a really powerful tool, because at 28 bushels an acre, at least I know there's some profit there. But I'm wondering on a whole farm approach, then if I look at wheat or flax, or if I'm looking to maybe grow more flax and less canola and switch up my oilseed rotation a little bit, maybe flax is a better option next year. Yeah. Having, using your numbers and having a tool like this really makes it easy to go in and plan for some of those scenarios and some of those eventual outcomes.
How easy is it to, update your true costs as you move into the growing season or from this kind of pre-planning stage? What's that look like?
No, that's a good question. So what we have, and what I always define our application as solid and simple. So, we've built it so that anybody can enter your numbers as you go. One of the existing integrations we do have is with John Deere My Op Center. So as farmers are going in, they can bring in all of their activities from My Op Center into AgExpert Field, and then be applying those costs of production for every pass they do on that farm. So that really gives you, I'm showing you the desktop version. This is obviously this view is available also on mobile, so you can kind of see in season in your field where you're at as you're making your agronomy decisions, if you're going to top dress, or if you want to think about spraying fungicide, or you're spraying for bugs or disease. Knowing where you're at, if you have 38 bucks an acre left and you're wondering whether or not you should spray for grasshoppers, that's a different decision than if your yields maybe at 33 and there's $92 an acre profit. So it's just even going through those scenarios as you're planning for the upcoming year or in season, I think is very important.
It feels very tangible. I know those are the thoughts and the way we're all kind of mentally tallying things through the growing season, but I can see how powerful this would be, particularly in the stressful season when you're just racking your brain over whether or not it's go time on something.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. It's tangible. You can see it. You have confidence, as long as you're doing the right things as far as setting up your farm and setting up your activities and accurately putting in the costs for your inputs. It just gives you some comfort that, yeah, I should or shouldn't do something. And what if we have a really average year next year and canola can get bumped up to 55? It does show there's some profit to do different things. If you want to spray some fungicide, if you want to top dress, and working with people like you, Kendall, marrying those agronomy decisions with your financial decisions, as easy as we can make that for our customers, I think is just a powerful tool.
How much work is the heavy lifting behind, getting to this point where you can play with these numbers? How much of a time investment is it for a guy to get the background, operating costs and input costs into the system?
It's a good question. Starting from scratch, and obviously the larger you are as a farm, the more work there is to do it. But everything in our system, I'm just going to stay here and I'll save this example in case we come back to it. But everything in field revolves around a field. So setting up your fields is not that difficult. So I'll just show you quickly. And as long as you're in the Dominion Land Survey, so all of Western Canada, you can choose, draw, or import your field, your shape. If you have a shape file from your equipment, you can import that in. You can draw it with our polygon drawer tool, or you can simply go on the map of your URM. You can search by your legal land address if you have it, or you can just try to get to the nearest town. So I'll just put in Odessa Sask. You can kind of find your farm. So we're right here, right on the 35 highway. If anybody's ever run over a cat or a chicken, sorry about that. And to add a field, you just basically click on it. It brings in your legal land location, your size, brings in all of your boundaries from a legal land description. You can call it whatever you want to call it. This was my neighbor's field, so I'll just call it my neighbor's field and delete it after, so it doesn't mess up. And hit save, and it's there. And then you can see, it's ready to start adding activities. So to add an activity, it's really simple. You can do this on your phone as well. I'll set up a planning activity for next year. So I'm going to say this is planned on my neighbor's field. I'm going to grow barley on it this year. He won't mind. And then I won't put any seed treatments on, but I already have my fertilizer amount set in here, and I have it all planned out, and I have the cost to it. So I know that I'll just default to 220. If I want to put 240 on pounds an acre of the cereal blend, I can. And then I'll plan for it in May. Barley's usually late. I can add equipment. So if I want to know, I'll add the different people that are, I'll say I'm going to put the labor on it, and then put my drill on here, and I save it. And then basically on that field now, you'll start seeing on the side. So because I didn't farm it last year, I can't remember my neighbor grew on it, but it'll show you your 3 or 4 year crop rotation as you're planning. And it'll start tracking all of your input costs. So in season, as you do a pass on the field, everything you set up tracks here on the side, which then relates back to that report that we were in earlier. So as it's actually really nice if you're running John Deere equipment and using my Op Center, because we have a 3-click integration. So bringing your info in season in from your John Deere equipment is really simple. It's no thumbs on keyboards. And then basically what we then allow it to do is, I'll just show you our inputs. We also, right now would be the time to go in and set up your input costs. So I have a bunch of inputs set up over the years. So I'll use my canola as an example with the purchase price per pound, my average seeding rate. So then as I go and say I'm seeding 46 CM39 canola, it knows that it's 1430 times $5 a pound. If when you're done the field, you found you put it on at 4.7 or 5.5, you can always adjust that. That's kind of one of the nice things too with the John Deere. When that info comes across, it's it's what that drill covered or what that tractor covered or what that's. Yeah, so you're updating actuals and you're applying actual prices that you paid. So to answer your question in the longest way possible, there's a ton of work. I shouldn't say a ton of work, but it takes some hours up front to set everything up. You're going in feeds, and it's not everything's from a pick list, so there's no handwriting. You don't have to remember, but setting things up and kind of putting a cost to it, it takes some time. It takes some time now to do it, but all the work you do now, if you spend 4 or 5 hours or 2 or 3 hours, depending on the size of your farm, setting it up, you save all that time in season because it's just a point and click then. Okay, you sprayed it, or
next fall you're just adding 2 or 3 new products or a new crop type. And
Exactly. To set up a new crop year, it's literally just clicking a tab and saying set up new crop year, and it pulls everything forward. And then you just go adjust the price or the inputs that that might be a change from 20 to 21.
With your like fertilizer blends and stuff, is all that custom? Coming from the agronomy perspective, the ability to play with that stuff and change it is always of interest.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, fertilizer is the only one that's a custom because every blend can be different, right? So I was using a core cereal blend last year from a local. So I put my, purchase price, what the density is, the things my average, I use this on my cereal. My average application rate I set up is 220 pounds an acre. And then you can see the nutrient makeup of that blend.
Awesome. Very cool. John Deere integration, are there any other integrations you guys have or working towards or excited about?
There is. So one of the things we've done in the last 2 or 3 years is we moved our application from a desktop app to a cloud app. So, being a desktop app, you're kind of bound. You can't really integrate with anybody, just from a technology aspect. Moving to the cloud allows us using APIs or using those connectors to help us interact very easily or integrate very easily with other systems. So we started with John Deere. John Deere is the most mature. They've been doing this the longest. They have the best API catalog in the business. But, there's lots of different companies. And we're, as we talk to our customers that use AgExpert, we now have the ability to integrate with other tools like crop intelligence or, like other agronomy tools, like accounting platforms, that are our accounting platform. Being in the cloud gives us the ability to do that in a very cost-effective and efficient manner.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with our customers? I mean, I get pretty excited about that. It's always fun to see the tools that could be used to help bring some clarity to some of these tougher decisions in a growing season.
No, I don't think so. And I know there's lots of different tools out there, but I like as you said, having something tangible in front of you, it makes such a difference to me when I'm making decisions. Whether it's a confidence thing, I don't know what it is, but it makes it real and it makes it in front of you. And then, Kendall, if you were my agronomist, I can ask you some better questions. Should I top dress canola? Should I cut back on my front loading this year? I can actually have a much more robust conversation with you about what I should be planning for next year. And I think that's, there's some power in that.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's comfort in working with individuals who know those numbers really well too. It makes everything a lot more straightforward. Well, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes there are some new complexities you haven't thought about, but having those conversations, that's it's important. It's a powerful tool, I think.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Darcy, and I'm sure you'll be around in our sphere for the next little while. And if anybody needs to get a hold of you, we'll get them in touch.
Yeah, for sure. I can always. It's not hard to find me. You can find me on Twitter at @farmer00 if you can't find me anywhere else, or LinkedIn, or ask Kendall or Ryan. They'll definitely make sure you can get a hold of me.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Kendall.